So today, one of our own committee members, he has been on the board for Big Brothers Big Sisters for the last 2 years, and they have some new and exciting programs and events coming up. So Randy Horsley, he's from Horsley Agency, did I say it? Horsley Agency Farmers Insurance, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about Big Brothers Big Sisters. So let's welcome Randy.
Thank you. I think this is actually the first time I've ever used a mic, so bear with me. My name is Randy Horsley. I own a farmers insurance agency here in town. I am also on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I am heavily involved with that program, and I have been since I started. I'm actually speaking on their behalf today simply because the development directors themselves are at the national conference. So I'm actually one of the only people that's in town for me to be able to speak on their behalf. So I want to talk a little bit about what Big Brothers is as an organization, as well as their recent partnership with the FOP, the Fraternal Order Police, and that charity here in the area as well. So for those who don't know what Big Brothers Big Sisters is, Big Brothers Big Sisters is a charitable organization that's nationwide. We have a local chapter here in the Black Hills. Their entire mission is connecting youth in the community who need a mentor and getting them with a mentor that they can have for typically the rest of their life. Sometimes it lasts a year, sometimes it lasts 10. A lot of them literally will last into adulthood for perpetuity. Most of the kids in the program are ones that are deemed to be in need, and that need is widely different. Sometimes that's because they come from a single parent family and they don't have a lot of time with their parents. Sometimes they have a hard time fitting into school, or they're having trouble with their grades. A lot of them are having trouble with the law or getting in trouble, things like that, and they just need a positive adult figure to kind of help them get through those formative years. A couple of facts about Big Brothers before I jump to the second page. So when a child goes through the program and they get done, or they become a little, is actually what they refer to them as, literally 100% of the littles that have been reported have admitted that they feel more socially accepted by their peers. They feel like they can fit in better, like they have someone to talk to more often. 85% of the littles who did not believe they would finish high school now believe they can and they will. 71% of them who didn't think they would ever go to college now think that they can and will go to college. 52% of them would decrease their days that they were absent in school. 73% improved their grades, and at least half of the kids decreased their attitudes towards risky behaviors. I don't think I've ever heard a report about a child that was in Big Brothers Big Sisters who did not positively benefit their life and seriously help them grow older. In 2017, the local Black Hills chapter here had 322 matches. So that's 322 kids and families in our actual local community that have benefited from Big Brothers Big Sisters last year. And Big Brothers as a corporation is the number one organization for mentorship relationships here in the Black Hills. This is actually a picture of me and my little Isaac. I actually see his sister quite often too, who's also in the program, but Isaac is my actual little, and that's one of the only decent pictures they've been able to get of us. So the organization as a whole, it gives kids an unbiased outlet to their problems. One of the things I think is the most important about the organization is that most of these kids, especially the ones from a single parent household, I grew up, my parents got divorced when I was 11. To be fair, I had about as great of a relationship with my parents as you could ever imagine, but I understood what it meant to be in a single parent household. I lived with my mom for the majority of the time. A lot of these kids don't know their other parent. They don't know their mom. They don't know their dad. They don't have an older sibling. They don't have maybe a lot of friends. So having an unbiased person to really vent to and to talk to and to ask questions that maybe they're not comfortable asking their parents about, or they're not comfortable telling their parents about, things that they have problems with at school, things like that. Almost every kid that is in the program starts to do better in school. Their behavior starts working better. They miss less days. And in light of the positive interaction that kids have with the program and how much better they get in the community, that's where the whole Fraternal Order of the Police comes in. That's the main thing that we want to talk about today as far as what's new and recent in the last 5 years is their partnership with the FOP. About 3 years ago, Barry and Dustin are local sheriff's department members here in town, and they've been in interaction with the executive director for Big Brothers for years. And they started talking about how much they noticed how often these police officers came in contact with kids who could really use the organization. Kids that were having problems, were having troubles, their parents were having problems, and they saw a need that they really believed in and that they were heavily integrated with. So they wanted to actually partner with Big Brothers Big Sisters and be able to combine that together. So they started in 2015 to try to help police relations with the youth and community as well, especially this last year. I'm sure everyone's aware of the negative media and the negative light that has been painted upon police officers all across the nation. And this organization also helps to try to better that image, I think, in a relationship that the police force has with the community. What we refer to them as is defenders of potential. Officers, liaisons, judges, lawyers, people that can see and understand that there are kids in the community that may be going down the wrong path and need a way to get out of that, to get off of that path. The Big Brothers Big Sisters is one of the best ways that a kid in need can get steered onto that right path without the law intervening, without them getting in trouble, without having any actual permanent ramifications on that child before they get to that spot. And for anyone who's unaware as well, the FOP is actually, it's a charity in its own self. This is not the actual police department. This is a charity organization that is comprised of police department members. They are a charity. They are, their main purpose is to bring that positive influence into the community, but they are not literally the police department. So from there, the Fraternal Order of Police, when they started this partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters, the main thing they wanted to do was start integrating with their golf tournament that they used to do. The FOP used to do a golf tournament for many years, and they hadn't done it for a while. So when they brought it back, they wanted to bring it back as a partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters. So all of the proceeds for this tournament every year go to Big Brothers. None of it goes to the FOP. They just help run it and help put it on. This is only our third year, so it's definitely a formative year. We're trying really hard to expand the scale of the tournament and get more people involved in it. I think a lot of people lose sight of what charity golf tournaments really are. We do have a lot of them. Like, I'm not going to pretend that we don't. There's probably 10 or 15 that we have every year. But a large majority of them are charity-based tournaments, and they're not just an excuse to go out and spend a day not working. That money literally does go to that charity. Last year, I think this particular tournament only had 14 teams, but it was almost $15,000 that we were able to raise to go to Big Brothers Big Sisters last year. And that's only half of what I hope to see it be this year. This year I am the primary sponsor of that event. I work with the FOP and Big Brothers. I'm at Big Brothers about once a week, but the FOP, we meet every month to go over the tournament and try to get as many people and as many businesses involved as we can. And in addition to that too, by the way, South Dakota Youth Hunting Adventures is a big part of that as well. They are a subsidiary of Big Brothers Big Sisters, so they are connected, but they are technically separate entities. But it's the same organization. The only real difference is the South Dakota Youth Hunting Adventures is specifically focused on hunting and fishing with youth. It's basically the same idea, it's just that their activities are hunting, fishing, outdoor type activities, whereas the traditional Big Brothers program is essentially whatever the kid wants to do. So they're very similar in how they function, but they're two technically separate entities. So the main point that I wanted to bring is that if anyone doesn't know about Big Brothers Big Sisters, if anyone knows anyone who has a little in need, and especially if anyone has a mentor who would like to get involved, it'd be super, super helpful if we can get those. It is extremely difficult to find mentors. Specifically male mentors. I'm one of only maybe 20% of the total amount of mentors we have are men. So if you do know any adult men in a situation where they think they might be able to spare some of their time and spare some of their energy to help a youth in our community, please have them reach out. They can always reach out directly to me. I'm always a liaison for the group. I'm a big myself. I'm on the board. I'm part of the organization. So if there's anyone that can be able to speak towards it, it would typically be me.
Randy?
My question is, do you do any type of background check with the mentors before they put them with kids?
Sure. Absolutely. Actually, that's one of the main things about the program. The background check ends reference checks, I'll get in that in a second. The lengths that they go to make sure that the people they're connecting with these children are good people to be connecting them with is about as extensive as you could reasonably imagine. When I went and did the program itself, it's about a 2 to 3 month process. It is not an overnight thing. They first thing they do is your actual background check. They do a credit check included in that. They do a on-site inspection. They went to my house. They just kind of walk through, just make sure that there's nothing that concerns them, make sure there's nothing dangerous, within reach, all that kind of stuff. You're not supposed to have any guns in the home if you have a little on your premises at any time. You're not supposed to have any alcohol that's within reach, that kind of stuff. So they definitely make sure that the environment they're bringing the children into is a safe environment. They do reference checks on your people that you put on there. They actually call them, every one of them. They will ask them, how long you've known them, what do you know about them, do you have any concerns or any reason to believe that they would not be a good person to have as a match. So it's quite extensive. I think as far as I know, it's pretty much as extensive as you can legally go without violating someone's personal rights, I think.
What actually brought you into volunteering and being a part of this?
So for me, I don't remember exactly what the specific trigger was, but I had thought about the program for many years. I didn't have any specific instances growing up or anything where I felt that it wasn't like a light bulb type situation for me, but I'm a huge advocate for kids. It is my genuine opinion that the only innocent people in this world are children. And I think that unfortunately a lot of kids go through a lot of things growing up that can make them into bad people. And I don't think that anyone was inherently bad. I think all of us are inherently good. We've just been influenced by other experiences. And a lot of these kids, in the program specifically, don't have that positive side of their life. And if they're growing up with only the negative and they're only seeing the negative aspects of what life can be, that's where they end up. And it bothers me a lot. So I felt that at the very least, I could try to be involved in the organization, and even if it's only one person in the organization and one kid, at least there's somebody that I can kind of show that it isn't always like that, and that that's not how life has to be. Now, fortunately, the little that I got matched with, he does have wonderful parents. They are from a separated household, and he's honestly probably the most respectful and polite kid I've ever met in my life. I've never met a kid that says thank you more than he does. But I feel like he's an anomaly, and a lot of these other kids need help as much or a lot more than he does. So, and that's where we kind of come into play. I know that a lot of people feel like they don't have enough time for the organization. That's the biggest thing that holds people back, especially men. The largest reason of surveyed men of why they don't join Big Brothers or they don't become a mentor is because they say they don't have time. And it isn't about not having time, it's about not making time. I don't see my little every week. I don't see him for 6 hours a day. I see him usually about every other week for 2 or 3 hours. You can't tell me you don't have every other week for a couple hours. But that's the quickest reason people have to not do it. So.
What is the follow-up after a big and a little are matched? I mean, what kind of follow-up programs? Are there meetings, or are there ways to connect back to kind of check and see how things are going?
Sure. I know I talk loud enough, but the mic doesn't hear it without us. So, actually, there's quite a bit of oversight. What we have are called match support specialists. That's their technical name. So Julie was my original match support specialist. She was the one that got me connected with Isaac in the first place. And how that works is once you get connected with a little, they will do a follow-up. In the first 90 days, they'll follow up basically every couple weeks. It's new, there's a lot of questions. Every child and every home situation is very, very different. So sometimes it goes very smoothly, and sometimes it really doesn't. In Isaac's situation, it's been very simple. His parents are typically really easy to work with, really easy to get along with. We don't really have any issues. But a lot of the matches, maybe the parents are hard to deal with. They are just difficult for the match to be able to make things work with, or maybe the child doesn't seem to get along with the match, or they don't really want to do the same things. And it doesn't happen that often, but it can. So what they'll do is the first 90 days, they'll do a follow-up every couple weeks where they do a phone interview, usually with the big and the little, and the little's parents, just to see, is there any problems? What have you guys been doing? What kind of outings have you had? How did that go? Did anything concerning come up or anything like that? When I first got into the program, one of the biggest things they mentioned was during these meetings, what they want to kind of find out is there any reason for you to be concerned about their situation? Is there anything that worries you? You know, did they say anything that causes concern? Every once in a while they'll get some that'll kind of, when the littles start opening up, you find out that there's actually some physical abuse going on at home. And that's kind of stuff needs to be brought up. Again, I haven't had that situation with Isaac, but they do follow up on a regular basis to make sure that everything's still going the way it should be going. The last thing they want is to set up a little and a big and for you to do things for a couple months and then just filter off and not talk anymore. That's not what it's about. So they do quite a bit of follow-up.
How long are they typically mentors and mentorees? How long do those relationships typically last? And then do you only have one child at a time, or do some of your volunteers have more than one?
That actually leads into, I'm going to switch over to the website that has their different programs that they have. As far as the mentor relationship events itself, the relationship is typically anywhere from 1 year to the rest of their lives. The average mentorship is 3 or 4 years. Depends on the age of the child when you became the mentor. Obviously depends on whether or not you didn't move away from the area, or obviously, there's extenuating circumstances, but for the most part, what their hope is that you develop a relationship with this child that will extend into adulthood. This is something where several of them fully expect to be a part of their lives, at least on a occasional mentorship level, for the rest of their lives. There's no reason that you can't be. I don't see any particular reason why I would not continue to be a mentor for Isaac, or even his sister. His sister is very close in his age and has a lot of the same kind of school things that come up. I'm trying to find the page here that I was looking at last night that has the other different options. There's a whole range of different programs where you mentioned, does one mentor only have one particular child? In the traditional program, yes. In the traditional program, it's just one person and one child. But there are several different ones that, I can't find it now. They have 4 or 5 different programs that they do at Big Brothers. One of which is like the Adopt a School program, where someone will go in and they will read books to a group of children on a regular basis. Then they kind of, throughout the school year, develop relationships with those kids and those things. But then you're talking about 10 or 20 different kids. They have some programs. There's a South Dakota Youth Hunting Adventure, but that's still usually a one-on-one, just like the traditional program is. So for the most part, it is one-to-one mentorship. It's supposed to be a relationship that you build with that child to just try to gain their confidence and their trust and be able to help them in situations that they might need outside help with.
Randy, can you speak to us a little bit about the marketing of the golf tournament and what has entailed in that, and what's been some of your biggest supporters and where some of your struggles have been as well?
The 2 main struggles that we've had, the first one is that last year and the year before, because this is only the 3rd year, the people that were seeing the ads about the event itself, they thought that it was a comp tournament, like it was just for police officers. They didn't realize that it was actually open to the public, which I think part of which was the type of flyer that they used. I completely understood why people misunderstood that, which we tried very heavily this year to make it very clear that it is not a police officers tournament. They are obviously going to have a lot of players in the tournament itself, but that's not what it is. The other part is just getting the exposure. We don't have that many outlets to gain awareness for this. The police department's pretty aware of it, obviously, because there's people in the police department that are in the tournament, but outside of the police department and the few people at Big Brothers, there's not really a lot of places for us to get that out there. We're trying to figure out a way to try to kind of separate ourselves from the other 15 golf tournaments that happen every year. And I think that this year is already going far better than it did last year. We have a large sponsorship from Vast already in the tournament. We have another one with, what is the sponsor we already have on that one? I think it's actually on this page. I mean, naturally me too, but on the main tournament here, I think the only other major sponsor we have right now is Riddles. Riddles is doing a large sponsorship as well that's been put in there. So I think it's really just getting the exposure and getting in front of enough people to let them realize that, hey, this is going to a good cause, and it stays local. That's a really big thing that people don't understand too. When you're raising money for Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Black Hills, you're literally raising money for our local chapter down on Quincy that is for people in the Black Hills. This is not nationwide. Your money is not going to places in California. Your money is going here in the community at the organization here. And so we're just trying to figure out how we can kind of get that word out and try to get more teams, try to get more support, and just try to make it a lot bigger than it's been.
Randy, talk to us a little bit about where the money raised, what exactly it funds, and how does it help support Big Brothers Big Sisters?
I'm wondering, I think they actually have a specific section about that too. As you can tell, I'm not the greatest at navigating the Big Brothers website. I don't actually use it all that often since I'm part of it. What you'll find is, and they do have a breakdown on there. They are 100% transparent about their financials. They literally on the main page have their actual financials. You can click and you can see exactly where the money goes when you bring money to Big Brothers. But I can tell you that a vast majority of that money is going to the setting up the relationship between the two and then managing it. So we have, I think it's about a half dozen match support specialists in the office. So obviously we have their salaries and wages to monitor the relationships and keep track of them. With 322 matches, that's like 55 matches per support specialist. So it is a full-time job for them. It's a daily thing where you're calling a dozen different people every single day, and then by the time you get done with your list, it's time to call the other people again. But in addition to that, the money has to go to all the other stuff that we talked about as far as getting a big relationship. Background checks, credit checks, home inspections, all of that kind of stuff it's a hefty cost. It's not free. So virtually all the money is going to, like I said, managing and running the actual agency, and then being able to actually connect these bigs and littles in that situation.
How else is Big Brothers Big Sisters funded? Are they United Way, or how are their
Sure.
what other ways do they get?
So the United Way is our largest sponsor. They are our largest contributor of funds every year. Speaking of which, due to that, we have a blackout period every fall where the United Way has they do their own thing for 2 months, and then we just kind of sit on the sidelines because that's part of the arrangement, because they do have such a heavy hand in Big Brothers. But separate from that, it's almost entirely either fundraising like this or grants from the federal and state governments, as well as just donations. We have several donors that contribute tens of thousands of dollars a year to Big Brothers. They believe in what it is, they believe in the cause, and they're going to be giving to something, and they choose to make sure that that is Big Brothers. So I think it's about, I'm not on the financial team, I'm on the events development direct team, but it appears to be roughly a quarter United Way, a quarter, probably more like a half grants and donations from the government and the local community, and then maybe 25% is the actual fundraising events that we do every year.
If somebody wanted to become a sponsor of either the golf tournament or something else, what are their guidelines? Is there a minimum? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the form that everyone has in front of them is just the regular, if you wanted to golf in the event form. I didn't actually put a copy of the business sponsors form on everybody's page because I didn't figure it would be too directly relevant for most people in here. But from a business sponsorship side, there's levels all the way from $250 to $2,000 as far as what you want to sponsor or donate in addition to your team. So it is separate from the team. That way anyone who's sponsoring the event doesn't necessarily have to golf in the event. It is very easy to get involved if you don't golf. We get that a lot. Well, I don't golf. Well, you don't have to golf, and you certainly don't have to golf well to be involved in the I don't. And it varies on what it is. You know, the larger the sponsorship, the more you get out of it as far as the event goes. With me being the primary sponsor, I'll have a booth at the front, and I'll have a hole that I sponsor. So I'll have a tent at the hole with production materials and that kind of thing. But just to be able to interact with and talk with everyone who comes through and golfs. Anyone who does the $1,000 sponsorship or more, we get the same thing. They get to interact and they get to talk to every single golfer that comes through. They get their name on all the publication materials, they get their name on the website. And obviously everything's, it's all charity, it's all a tax write-off, it's all positive business advocation for a local charity. And then, like I said, that's separate from golf. So if it's someone who just wants to golf, but they don't want to be a business sponsor or vice versa, they can do either or both or whatever they want.
Randy, can you talk to us a little bit about what might be coming in the future and what Big Brothers Big Sisters is looking at to expand, and any possible other events that might be coming down the pipeline or programs?
Because most of it's proprietary information they haven't released to the public yet. But the whole organization is going to be very, very different a year from now. The way we run things should be the same, but the marketing campaign, designs, things like that, all of that stuff is getting a serious revamp, a change. Everything's going to be, they won't give me any specifics, but they keep telling me that it's going to be magnificent, and they're very excited about it, and they're super happy. That's actually what they're going about in the national conference right now, actually, is a big part of what they talk about. I know that they are going to more heavily emphasize their relationship with the police departments. They refer to it as red thread in the area, so police departments, school massacre type options and situations, things like that. That's where we kind of tie into a lot of this. I didn't bring this up earlier, but that's a big reason why all of this kind of frustrates me overall. We get all of this conversation about with some of the tragedies that we've had in the last year, gun control, things like that, and I'm not going to take a stance on that. I'm not going there. But it is my genuine opinion that at our point in this world, it isn't about what a person is using to commit terror. It's why a person is choosing to commit terror. And all of these kids, you can't tell me that every one of these kids is just a bad seed. They just had a malicious intent. They hate the world, they hate people, and they just wanted to hurt. That's not how it happens, or at least I don't believe so. Literally 95% of the actual children that have committed heinous acts over the last several years have come from single-parent families. Almost every single one of them came from a single-parent family. Almost all of those single-parent families were mother-only families. They did not have a father figure in the home. They didn't have a strong male influence or basically a second person to help. And that's where I think if Big Brothers Big Sisters is an organization that exemplifies that if you take a few moments out of your time and a few moments out of your day to take care of a child and express to them that they matter and they actually, like, you care about their existence, things like that will happen less. They won't go away 100%, they won't. But they will happen less, they will happen less often, and they will happen to a lesser extent. So in that vein, a lot of where they're kind of going towards is the relationship they have with police officers, with judges, with liaisons, school liaisons, and things like that. As far as new programs or additional ones, the only other one coming up this particular year is we do have the golf ball drop coming up in about a month, 2 months now. If for anyone who's unfamiliar, what they do is they go downtown to Main Street Square, and everyone can buy a golf ball for $5. Every golf ball that's purchased goes into a giant netted bag, and they literally drop a giant pile of golf balls in the middle of Main Street Square. Now, to be fair, this time of year it's grassed over, so it's not nearly as awesome as it would be if it was concrete. But apparently there's all kinds of insurance problems with making that happen. So that is coming up in a couple months. That one's been kind of so-so over the last number of years. It's really difficult because of the nature of how the money is funded. When you're talking about $5 a ticket, $5 a ball, it is extremely hard to get a large sum of money for an event at $5 a ball. So it ends up taking so much time out of the staff and so much time out of the staff's day and the board's day that they end up turning their full-time job away from Big Brothers and turning it into selling tickets. And that's not necessarily what we want. So I don't know how many more years we're going to continue to do the golf ball drop because of that. It might be something that we change it up, change into some other programs. We'll figure something out. But that's the other one that's coming up in a couple months. The golf tournament's in August. We just had Bowl for Kids' Sake in April. Bowl for Kids' Sake is the largest event they do every year. They've done that for 20-some years now. And those are the three main events that Big Brothers has every year for fundraising, is those.
Okay, this is to kind of go back to the relationship big to little. What does that look like? What kind of things do you do? Is it just you and them? So for example, like I'm married, can the little be around my family, for example? Things like that. I'm just kind of
Yeah, and that's a pretty common question, actually. So there's really three different types of traditional relationships like that. There's a male with a boy. There's a female with a girl. South Dakota won't let you cross genders, by the way. It comes up sometimes. Some states will, some states won't. But there's also actually a married big relationship where both of the couple as a couple, will actually mentor the child, whether it be a boy or a girl. In addition to that, though, it really ends up becoming what the parents are comfortable with. So when they start the program, they want you to make sure that your first several outings at least are just you one-on-one time with the child. Make sure that you guys get along, that you're comfortable with each other, that you've gained that kind of at least basic level of trust. And then from there, it really just depends on what the parents are comfortable with. Isaac has his sister Hannah, she's 13. Assuming she hasn't recently had a birthday that I haven't been made aware of. But she's also in the program. She has a big as well, but she didn't have one for a long time. Because what they try to do as a corporation is they try to make sure that when they match you with a child, they're matching you with a child that has the same interests as you. Someone who grew up in the same fashion that you did, someone who's into the same things that you are. Me and Isaac, still to this day, are into the same type of video games and the same type of spare time type activities. We both had divorced parents, roughly the same age when they were divorced. We've both been heavy set our whole lives. You know, we both have glasses. They just fit really well, and they try to make sure that is the relationship that you have, so you have things in common. So with me and Isaac specifically, we'll go to the movies because we usually like the same movies. We will we'll play a number of different video games that we can play together. There's the arcade, birthday parties, things like that. Sometimes it can be a little trying to think of new things to do with them. During the summer is a lot easier because there's a lot more social events that go on. So you can go to like the kids fair and you can take them down to, even if it's just Main Street Square, whatever it is you want to do. But it really just becomes what you guys are comfortable with. So as long as you and him want to go do it and their parents are cool with it, that's really all that matters from there.
Can you remind everybody, I think there's an age out phase that you're done with the formalized mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the relationship continues into adulthood, but I think, if I remember right, there's an age out phase
There is.
as well.
Yeah, so kids starting the program are only from 5 to 15. So if you're over 15, you won't be able to start in the program. If you're younger than 5, you can't start in the program. From there, if you're already in the program, they'll take you all the way up to 17 before they will take you out of the quote-unquote formal program. I don't honestly know if it's at 17 or if it's just right at when they turn 18, but that's right around the ballpark where they start letting that kind of go and letting that happen naturally. I believe it's different from state to state as well, between 16 and 18, depending on what technical age of adulthood and all that kind of stuff goes, as far as whether or not you want to voluntarily continue doing it or your parents are still keeping you in it. But 5 to 15 is the normal range. Most of our matches are between ages of 8 and 11, which in my opinion is kind of the most important time in the first place. I think that's when kids are really starting to develop their attitudes and their inclinations to what they think is right and wrong and what they should and shouldn't do, and they start noticing if they are or are not having problems in school and all that kind of stuff.
Are there certain activities that are not allowed? I'm kind of looking at maybe church-related activities or those kind of things.
So strictly not allowed is only things that would be of harm to the child. So things that are illegal, things that are unsafe, unhealthy, things like that. But as far as things of that nature, when you first start in the program as a big, one of the first things they do in the interview process is they ask you that kind of thing. Are you religious? If you are, what kind of religion do you follow? What kind of sexuality do you demonstrate? Are you straight, gay, in the middle? Where do you lean on that spectrum? They will ask all kinds of those questions, and to be honest, they can kind of feel a little invasive. But they need to know that, because a lot of these parents are very specific about what they do and don't want to have. And whether you agree or not is not the point. What their parents want to see their kids be around is of the utmost importance. So if you have parents that are devoutly Christian, they may not necessarily want a big who is Muslim or something like that. In that situation, it really just comes down to what the parents are comfortable with again. So they'll match you based on similar characteristics, and they will specifically ask you ahead of time too, you might practice this religion. Do you care what the other person practices? Or they'll say, we have several people in the program that are gay mentors. Do you have a problem with that? If you do, we won't match you. If you don't, great. They're very sensitive to make sure that the parents are not getting their kids matched with someone that they don't think that they would be comfortable with them getting matched with. And that's where those first few meetings really come out to light too, because the parents need to make sure that they're comfortable with the mentor, with how they do things, with how they are, how they act, things like that. And that's where the first 90 days is really important, to make sure that the big and the parents can get along and are comfortable with each other, in addition to the child being comfortable.
Are there any contracts, agreements to be signed, and things I think more towards like mandatory reporting? Things that the mentor needs to report that they're seeing?
Sure.
And then what the obligation is of Big Brothers Big Sisters then to report, say if there is abuse?
Oh, okay. So now, bad situations like that haven't specifically come up for me, so I don't necessarily know where the line is between being made aware of it and being legally required to say something. But I do know that they will, I think this stopped working. I do know that they will, they have to legally report it if they have any indication that there is genuine misuse. If there's actually been physical abuse, or any legally sufficient reason for them to believe that there's a genuine problem, they have to do something about it. I don't know where that line is as far as what they have to report and not report, but they're very sensitive to that. A lot of kids, especially inner city kids that are in this situation, do get in that position. So I know it comes up, but thankfully I haven't had to personally interact with that. As far as reporting and mandatory, stuff like that, so as a big, I don't have necessarily any mandatory reporting to do to Big Brothers because they'll reach out to me. Now, I talk to them, obviously I'm there every week, so with me it's a little bit different. But with a traditional big, the Big Brothers will call you every 30 days. So once a month, they'll call you and check in and just see how things are going. Have you seen them? If you did, what did you do? How did it go? Anything that concerns or worries you or anything like that? So they will always check in on a monthly basis. Now, they want you to check in as much as you feel reasonable, but there's not necessarily a requirement or anything like that. As far as contract or length of time, obviously there's no legally binding contract because you are volunteering, you know, you're all part of a program. But when you do sign on, they do sign you on with a reasonable expectation that you will continue to do it for at least a year. They want to see matches last far longer than that, but they also understand that lives change, things happen, maybe you didn't like it or whatever it may be and you want to get out, but they don't want people to come in and out of kids' lives on a daily basis. So they do expect at least a year's commitment, but from there, that's about as much as I think as they can require. So as a community, there's two sides to this. The one obviously is the golf tournament itself. We're trying to raise awareness. So if you have any friends, family, colleagues, or businesses who you think might want to get involved, who might want to golf, might want to sponsor, anything like that, it'd be wonderful. Feel free to reach out to me directly or on each one of these flyers here too. There is the contact information at the bottom for the gals at Big Brothers. Savannah and Nicole are the executive director and the development director. Those are the ones that I deal with on a daily basis. And they'll be able to get you any information that you might need for those events. Separately from that, we're looking for mentors. The organization as a whole is looking for mentors, especially male mentors. So if you know anyone, they can be ages 18 to 65, I think is what they go to. As far as that might be able to spare some time, who wants to develop that relationship with someone in the program and wants to be able to be a mentor, have them reach out. You know, have them call Savannah, call Nicole, see if it's something that's feasible for them, if it works for them. Or if they want to be in the South Dakota Youth Hunting Program as well. Like I said, they are technically separate, but they'll be able to get you to the right people, and you can do the same thing there. Really just depends on what kind of stuff you're interested in. Naturally, the hunting program is a lot more regulated. You know, you're talking about guns and things like that. It's a lot more, there's a lot more oversight in those type of outings, but the overall is still the same idea.